Welcome to Women in Public Safety Podcast, where real life meets raw truth. I'm your host, Harriet Westmore. I'm a state parole officer dedicated to unraveling human complexities through true life cases, what we will call Case Chronicles. Join me weekly as we explore gripping narratives from the front lines of law enforcement and social services, from triumph to despair. We will uncover human resilience, vulnerability, and lastly, of course, justice. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media for the latest episodes and to join in the movement for change. Hey, everybody, this is Harriet Westmore with the Women in Public Safety Podcast. This is the podcast where we discuss the challenges and triumphs for women who work in public safety or as a first responder. I want to welcome you to another episode. Today we are going to do a Case Chronicle study. For those who are listening or viewing me by YouTube, I want you to do me a huge favor and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to those who you think could benefit from watching these podcasts. Okay, today's Chronicle, I'm going to talk about what we call in mental health secondary trauma or vicarious trauma. And that is, as a first responder, you are taking on the trauma of the population or the client or the customer that you serve. And that could be very troubling because you're bringing home other people's trauma. You're inheriting that trauma within you and bringing it home to your own personal life. I'm going to give you an example of a situation where I took on the trauma of someone else that I was helping. I was a legal advocate for domestic violence and worked in my local community. Let's see, that was back in mid 2000s, like 2005, 2006. And I worked within the court system. So my job was to help victims who had domestic violence cases to navigate the process through the court. In terms of hearings, I would help them prepare for hearings if need be. I would be their support system and their point of contact if they have questions of what is going on within the court system, because going to court for many can be very intimidating. And so, especially for those who are victims of a crime. And so I was the liaison between the system, the court system, the courts, and the victims or the witness or survivors. Well, this particular case was I would say at that time, it was one of the worst domestic violence cases that I have encountered and had to be an advocate for the victim. The defendant or the offender, he was a very abusive, they weren't even married, but he moved in with the victim and her 5 children. And he was just he was a thug. When I say thug, he was just, I never could understand the attraction. He wasn't good looking. He didn't have a job. He didn't have nothing. He was just, I don't know what the attraction was. He didn't offer nothing. He didn't give nothing. But this young lady saw something that anybody else wouldn't see. But anyway, he moved into the home. The children wasn't even, I don't think biologically, they weren't even his, but she had 5 kids and none of the children were his. And as the relationship progressed, he became abusive verbally and physically towards her. I don't think he abused the children, but the children had witnessed their mom getting, abused physically. He was just a terror. He would terrorize that whole household. And I think she finally, the police were called, many a times. This is not the first time, but the police were called. And this particular time, she actually wanted out of that relationship. So she did come to a court and she did testify as to what was going on with him. And I think that particular incident that happened, he locked her inside the bedroom and just kind of like held her hostage. She couldn't tend to the children. The kids were old enough to know what was going on. He physically abused her throughout the night. He finally left the home, and then the police were called, and she came to court to get a temporary protection order, and a warrant was issued for his arrest. And so her case was assigned to me, and she came into my office and we talked, and I just felt so bad for her. And I really felt bad for her kids because she had to bring all her 5 kids with her down to the police station where I worked at the time. The police department was downstairs, the first floor, and the courts were on the second floor. So it was all in one building. And, she came and, I spoke with her. I talked with her. She told me what was going on. I got a copy of the police report. Not only did he abuse her, he unalived the family dog, which is always a sign of an abuser. If they harm the family dog from the children. And that's exactly what he did. So he was taken into custody. She got the temporary protection order. It was on a Friday, because I remember it was on a Friday, and hearing her story, and then I saw her 5 kids came to court with her 5 children, and just seeing those kids, especially her oldest was her son, and he was trying to watch his younger siblings. It just broke my heart, and I just thought about her over the weekend. She was given the protection order. She was granted the protection order. She made such an impact that she impacted not only the court, the judge, but she impacted the rest of the staff that was working in the clerk's office. I think we all were just feeling so much empathy for her. And we all went home thinking about, okay, if this monster bonds out, which he wasn't, there was no bond, but just seeing this monster and what he did to her and the children vicariously, the family pet, he was just a monster. And I did take on that trauma of that fear of what she had went through. And I had to I talked to my husband, about it. Sometimes I try not to bring stuff home, but I mean, that particular case just got to me, because not only because of her, but because of those kids. And it just goes to show, women, you can't be in a relationship just because you're lonely or you need a man in your life. Obviously, he wasn't a man anyway. He was an animal. And I'm just keeping it, there was no other way to describe him. He was just evil. He should have been put under the jail. Later on, during the pretrial process, because once, he was charged, he was given a protection order, and she stuck with the protection order until like maybe 2 pretrials in, came into my office and wanted to drop everything. And that's usually the pattern. Not always, but I was very disappointed. I talked to her, went into court during the pretrial, and even the judge had tried to talk to her and asked, "Are you sure this is what you want?" She wanted to drop the protection order, and it was granted. I don't know the outcome of what happened after that. I think after she refused to cooperate, so they had to, I think his charge was reduced to like a disorderly conduct, which, is very upsetting, because I know that this monster had a history. He had a history of DV. So, I mean, but taking on that trauma and just feeling her pain, it does affect you when you are as a first responder in situations like this, as a first responder. And so, which is very important for us as women. I think because of the fact that there were kids involved, and we as women, a lot of us, and I'm not saying, I'm only speaking from my perspective as a woman, you take on that empathy, because we are mothers. We may have kids, we may have, younger children, and we just take on that nurturer, caring part of us. Just want to just make sure that those kids are okay, and even her. But there's nothing you can do if she doesn't want to pursue the case. And a lot of times, and not, it's not victim blaming. A lot of times, it takes, as they say, almost 7 times to try for a victim of a domestic violence to leave before they actually leave and do not return back to their abuser. And it's one of the most dangerous times is when you are leaving, because anything can happen between that time you leave and when you try to move on. That's one of the critical times of that something may happen. So this is why it's important to reach out and tell resources that you need. Do not keep everything inside or in your house. If something is going on, you have to tell somebody. You got to call the police 10 times. You got to have, at least it's documented. But you let people know that you are being abused. It's not your fault. You have to protect yourself as well, especially if you have kids involved. Those kids are in a situation where they're actually seeing things that are going on. Please get the help that you need. Do not be afraid to tell somebody and to talk about it and to get the help through the courts. We all know that protection orders are nothing but a piece of paper. I will even venture off to say, get the protection that you need. And because you do have a right to defend yourself by any means necessary. So that's my case chronicle for today. Vicarious living in taking on the trauma of the clients or the public or the community that you serve in your daily job duties. I'm sure first responders and paramedics and the healthcare, they see a lot of trauma. They see the aftermath of abuse, physical assaults, and you take on that trauma that person has. Now you take it on and you bring it home, and it is very stressful. So if you have a story, if you have comments on this podcast, please leave a comment. And if you have a story that you would like for me to talk about concerning something that you went through, or that someone who needs help, you can reach me at publicsafetybywomen@gmail.com. And let everybody, let's just make it a village of support. It's not easy. This is not an easy job. I mean, if it was easy, everybody would do it, but it's not easy. You have to learn how to take care of yourself before you take care of others. All right, you guys take care, and I will talk with you next week. All right, stay safe. Bye.